Dylan Dreyer and her longtime husband have called it quits. The Today host announced her surprise split from Brian Fichera after 12 years of marriage.
After 12 years of marriage, Dylan Dreyer has finally revealed the truth. And it's not what anyone expected. The Today Show co-host stunned fans when she confirmed her quiet separation from longtime husband, Brian Fichera. What really happened behind the scenes? Why did their seemingly perfect relationship come to an end? Was it the pressure of parenting, the weight of fame, or something far more personal? For the first time, Dylan is speaking out.
Dylan Dreyer is opening up about a change in her personal life. The Today co-host and her husband Brian Fichera have separated after 12 years of marriage.
Not to assign blame, but to share her side of the story with honesty, grace, and strength. Their fairy tale beginning. In 2012, Dylan Dreyer was a rising star in local news. Working at a Boston TV station, she was known for her infectious energy, quick wit, and unmistakable warmth that made her stand out on camera. But behind the scenes, she was just another journalist navigating unpredictable shifts and early call times until one fateful assignment paired her with a young cameraman named Brian Fichera. He was steady, smart, and quietly funny. The kind of guy who didn't push to be the center of attention, but knew how to light up a room. At first, their relationship was purely professional. They worked well together, respected each other's craft, and laughed more than most newsroom colleagues. Then, slowly, their connection grew beyond the workplace. They started golfing together, just as friends. But soon, those afternoons on the green turned into long talks, inside jokes, and the quiet realization that something deeper was forming. In a world where careers moved fast and relationships often took a back seat, Dylan and Brian managed to find something rare: balance. She once said, "He kept me grounded when everything around me was spinning." That same year, they took the leap and got married. It wasn't a Hollywood wedding or a massive media affair. It was simple, sincere, and full of joy. They settled into married life with an easy rhythm. Dylan's career was gaining traction, eventually landing her on Today in 2012. Meanwhile, Brian began working at NBC News as a producer and cameraman. Their personal and professional lives began to run parallel in the same fast-paced media world. Outwardly, this couple appeared perfect. Laughter, shared ambitions, and mutual respect defined their relationship. They supported each other through career successes and shared in the stillness of life. When news came that Dylan's role at Today had gotten bigger, there he was, Brian, in the back room, just out of cameras' view, but ever present. Their first son, Calvin, was born in 2016, followed by Oliver in 2020 and Russell in 2021, each with heavier joys and responsibilities. Dylan fondly shared pictures of family life, candid shots at home, and updates on how it was chaos and beauty to raise 3 boys. The fans loved to see the family evolving. One might not say this family has become relatable. They have become aspirational. What made it so compelling was the sense of reality. They don't pretend perfection. There are messy hair mornings, hasty school drop-offs, and couches bearing the weight of takeout accompanied by cartoons. Just a young family making things work day by day. They simply called one another teammate, rock, and best buddy. Brian was Dylan's teammate, rock, and best friend. They had basic inside jokes and joint playlists, and their recurring tradition had been golf. Even now, with kids and work and schedules full to bursting, they still manage to make time for the game that just brings them together. They still share golf as an activity, no matter how busy their schedules get with kids and work. To quote Dylan in a 2023 interview with The New Yorker, "Golf is the thing we do together. We laugh. We remember why we fell in love. Then we go home and it's right back to family." But over time, the demands of work, parenting, and life began to add pressure. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. However, even the most solid foundations can start to crack quietly. And while Dylan and Brian never stopped loving each other, the truth was becoming harder to ignore. A marriage in the spotlight. As Dylan Dreyer's profile rose at NBC, so did the intensity of her life. Being on Today meant early mornings, tight deadlines, and the kind of national exposure that could change a person overnight. While Dylan stayed grounded, the pace was relentless. And behind every early wake-up call, every perfectly timed weather report, and every on-air laugh was a home life that needed just as much energy. Brian, also working for NBC News, understood the pressure. He knew the pace. He knew what the job demanded because he lived it too. That shared understanding made them a power couple in private, two people who didn't just love each other, but deeply understood the world the other operated in. But that same world also made it nearly impossible to slow down. By the time their first son, Calvin, was born in 2016, the balancing act had officially begun. Dylan was waking up at 3 a.m. for work, prepping for broadcasts, and traveling when needed. Meanwhile, Brian juggled his own professional demands behind the camera. Even with supportive family and childcare, some moments tested them both. Dylan was candid in interviews about how difficult it was to do it all. She wasn't afraid to say she was tired, overwhelmed, or stretched too thin. Still, she smiled through it. Fans connected with her honesty and admired her ability to maintain poise in the chaos. She wasn't pretending to be the perfect mom or the perfect wife, just someone trying her best in a world that rarely paused for breath. Outwardly, they showed a cohesive front. Social media was replete with posts depicting family vacations, birthday parties, golf outings, and downright cuddly mornings. No hints of divorce, bitterness, or problems in between. But those who have lived under the constant gaze of society know appearances are sometimes quite misleading. By the time Oliver and Russell joined the family, the household was a blur of bottle feedings, toddler tantrums, heaps of toys, work schedules, and travels. "These boys are my whole life," Dylan often used to say. She curtailed appearances on Weekend Today to spend more time with them, calling a weekend home with Brian her favorite time of the week. In her own words, "We were a team." However, a team doesn't necessarily ensure the survival of a marriage. What Dylan and Brian had was love, but it was also responsibility, weariness, and time-honored routines. The common world they once enjoyed together, them being TV production and news media, now felt like something to be negotiated rather than something to revel in. Their connecting times became shorter, wedged in between the projects they had to do. Dylan had said in an interview in 2023 what was to be taken as gospel, but people did not realize that it was more than that at the time. Speaking about golfing with Brian, she said, "We laugh. We remember why we fell in love. Then we go home and it's right back to family." It was a sweet thought, a little tinged with the frankest possible light. The reconnecting moments were becoming just that, moments, fleeting and temporary. There was no fighting. There was no scandal. But sometimes love changes form. It doesn't leave. It simply shifts. From passion to partnership, from romance to responsibility. And that shift, while subtle to outsiders, became impossible for Dylan and Brian to ignore. When the cracks began to show. As much as Dylan and Brian shared careers, kids, and a decade of memories, something began to shift behind the scenes. On the surface, they were a high-functioning couple. But beneath the matching smiles and perfectly filtered Instagram photos, cracks had quietly started to form. The kind of cracks that don't show up in headlines, but show up in private silences and unanswered questions. In interviews, Dylan had always been transparent about the chaos of parenting 3 boys under 8. She never sugarcoated the exhaustion. But what fans didn't see was how that exhaustion extended far beyond just bedtime routines and early wake-ups. It was seeping into her marriage. The demands of both their careers didn't leave much room for emotional connection. Their bond had always been rooted in shared ambition and mutual respect, but the emotional intimacy, the glue that holds relationships together, was slowly wearing thin. As co-parents, they were solid. As romantic partners, that was becoming a more difficult question to answer. Dylan once described her home life as beautiful chaos, but that chaos had a price. When you're constantly in motion, juggling live broadcasts, childcare drop-offs, homework, laundry, and production calls. What often gets sacrificed is the relationship itself. The person you love becomes a teammate, not a partner. Conversations become logistical. Touch becomes mechanical. And moments of stillness between two people can start to feel like distance, not peace. No monumental fights occurred. No dramatic scenes erupted. Just an agonizingly slow, silent dissipation that attains tremendous success in the face of scrutiny when partners evolve in divergent directions, building these contrary paths usually with the help of fame and public expectation. Yet they kept trying. They set up weekends for golf as a couple, tried to steal time away from the kids, even attempted date nights at home. But all too often, those schemes ended in their typical way. He was too tired, she was distracted. They ran a home, raised 3 kids, and pursued demanding careers. There wasn't much left to give each other. Sources surrounding Dylan suggest that acceptance came on slow and quiet steps. There wasn't a major scandal or infidelity that precipitated this, the clear understanding. Just an unspoken understanding that together they had built a beautiful family. But somewhere along the road, they stopped working on the marriage. She told Dylan years ago a saying that now reverberates painfully clear. "I don't know how anyone does this without help." At that time, she was referring to motherhood. But that feeling applied to her marriage as well. When two successful individuals happen to be in a media environment, it makes things empowering but at the same time isolating. Dylan, like Brian, had built for himself a career where precision and performance actually play a big part. Real life, however, does not go by scripts. There are no retakes, no makeup crews, no commercial breaks. Just two people trying their best and failing sometimes, no matter how victorious they look. Months passed, and the emotional chasm grew greater between them. They were not angry, not bitter, and yet after all, they weren't really together anymore, not in the way that mattered. And slowly, the idea of separation stopped being unthinkable. It started being something to consider. As a way forward, one not built out of resentment, but out of mutual respect. And when the moment came to say it out loud, to acknowledge that their marriage was over, they did it not with anger, but with grace. The quiet decision to walk away. There was no headline, no press conference, no scandalous paparazzi shots of a fight outside a restaurant. When Dylan Dreyer and Brian Fichera finally made the decision to separate, it was done quietly, intentionally. This wasn't a moment meant for public drama. It was a private heartbreak handled with care. And perhaps that's what made it so powerful. For months, they carried the weight of the decision alone. To friends and co-workers, nothing seemed off. They still posted smiling family photos. They still worked as a team on the weekends with their boys. But behind those images was a decision already in motion. A decision made in late-night conversations. A decision born not from one moment, but many small, aching realizations. Dylan had hinted at the emotional tug-of-war in interviews. Her choice to leave Weekend Today was framed around family, and it was. But it was also about rediscovering herself, about pausing long enough to ask, "Am I happy?" and "Are we still growing together?" These weren't questions she could ignore anymore. The rhythm of their marriage had become routine, functional, loving, yes, but something was missing. The turning point, insiders say, wasn't a fight, but a quiet weekend away, just the two of them. No kids, no cameras, no expectations. A reset. They thought the space might reconnect them, but instead, it gave them the clarity they'd both been avoiding. In the stillness, they realized that the life they had built together wasn't broken. It had just changed. And neither one was to blame for that. Walking away had nothing to do with giving up. It was simply an acknowledgement of the truth. They had loved very deeply, but that love had transformed into something else. This love had turned into an amalgam of respect, co-parenting, and friendship. But the intimacy? The romance? The spark that was once rekindled time and again on the golf course or through shared laughter had extinguished itself. And that spark was not making any comebacks. So they succeeded where many couples fail. They picked honesty over obligation. Dylan and Brian took time to talk about how they would proceed. They talked to therapists. They talked to their families. And they had the hardest chat ever with their children. They made a promise to each other and their 3 sons.
This baby is a piece of both of us. You know, everything we love about each other and all the times we enjoyed together, we've created this wonderful life that is going to be a piece of both of us, and it's going to become part of our lives.
They would always stand together. Nothing would break the bond of their love, and they would always be a family. On July 18th, Dylan made herself public. Her Instagram post was very touching and deliberate. Not for blame, not for bitterness, just truth. "A few months ago, Brian and I came to the mutual decision to part," she wrote. It was contemplative and not devoid of gratitude, not only for their time, but also for the support afforded to them in whatever journey they were in. It was not only a separation post, but a proclamation of peace. What she said about co-parenting struck. "We shall raise together our 3 wonderful boys with nothing but love and respect for one another." This line may be more than the others said. Let the heart of the matter lie. It was not an end to something, but a reconstituting something into something new. That sometimes the best love is not to stay, but rather to let go. And as Dylan stepped into this next chapter, she wasn't hiding. She was leading by example, showing that choosing peace is not weakness. It's courage. What Dylan wants you to know now. Dylan Dreyer didn't share her divorce to make headlines. She shared it because she knew someone out there needed to hear it. Someone was quietly wondering if they were the only ones. Someone questioning whether love that changes is still valid. Someone afraid to let go of a story that no longer fits. And if there's one thing Dylan wants you to know now, it's that you're not alone. In the weeks since her announcement, Dylan hasn't disappeared into silence. She's remained present, offering subtle glimpses into how she's moving forward. Not with bitterness, but with honesty, grace, and even a little hope. In a world obsessed with scandal and finger-pointing, her message is refreshingly grounded. Life changes, people grow, and endings aren't always failures. She's not pretending it was easy. Divorce isn't just a legal decision, it's an emotional reckoning. It's reimagining every routine, redefining your identity, and still waking up every morning to be strong for your kids. Dylan knows this intimately, and she knows that behind every brave face is someone who's processing grief in quiet moments, packing up memories, fielding questions from friends, answering curious glances. But through it all, she's stayed focused on what matters most: stability for her boys and a sense of peace for herself. Dylan has often said she's a realist, someone who finds strength in facts and clarity. And in this moment, clarity is what's helping her heal. She understands that it's possible to love the life you had while still choosing to create something new. She understands that co-parenting, when rooted in respect, can actually strengthen a child's sense of safety and love. And she understands that healing isn't linear. Some days are good, others are hard. But forward is still forward. What she wishes would come through to other women, but really, especially mothers, is this: you do not owe anyone perfection. You can outgrow some version of yourself. You can put peace ahead of looks. And though you live a more public life than a lot of people do, you still get to preserve your heart. She wants to redefine divorce itself. It's no longer something to be told in cautionary tales, but could be redefined. Starting over. Beginning to learn who you are all over again. This is what, in broad strokes, Dylan is doing right now. She is relearning how to spend a weekend without the stress of dividing time. She's finding out what brings her happiness that isn't being a mom or a broadcaster. She is discovering beauty in silence, not filling every space with noise or obligation. Not one of regret, but gratitude for what was and what gave the courage to turn the page. Perhaps the most important thing Dylan wants you to take away from her journey is this: you can choose yourself and still be kind. You can walk away without burning the house down. You can grieve the past while embracing the future. In another relationship, she would not be in a hurry. She would not be looking for a banner. She is choosing to be still. Reflection. And this deeply seated notion that maybe the next chapter of her life will be when she is most true to herself. She's not just moving on. She's moving forward with intention, dignity, and an open heart. While conversations flourished as to how she might explain this chapter of her life, Dylan's proving that sometimes you don't have to. You just have to live it. And in living it, she offers quiet permission for others to do the same. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones you simply choose to keep walking through, with courage and without apology. If Dylan's story moved you, share this video with someone who might need it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage and authenticity. And stick around. Another inspiring video is coming up on your screen now.